In the bustling city of Los Angeles, where ostentation and glamour often overshadow harsh realities, lived a young boy named Spencer. For him, Los Angeles was not the city of angels, but a stage of deprivation and hardship since childhood. Life introduced him to poverty at an early age. His parents, Dakota and Dalton, had an endless battle with alcohol addiction. He remembered the screams and tears, the nightly fights, and the promises of a better tomorrow, always broken at the sound of another bottle being opened. At the age of only 8, life dealt him a fatal blow. His mother, Dakota, a woman once full of life and laughter, became a victim of her own struggle. Cirrhosis, a cruel sentence issued by years of alcohol abuse, took her away. She departed on a Tuesday morning, leaving behind a trail of pain and a young boy without a mother's presence. Dalton, his father, was devastated by the loss. The love he had for Spencer was undeniable. Looking into those little blue eyes, filled with fear and uncertainty, he saw an opportunity for redemption. He decided to give up alcohol. He sought help, attended meetings, endured the terrible withdrawal symptoms, all for the sake of his son. To survive and take care of Spencer, Dalton found a humble but dignified job. He collected cardboard. He walked the streets of Los Angeles in the early hours, dragging an old wheelbarrow, picking up discarded boxes in dark alleys and overflowing trash bins. Life was tough, and the pay was minimal. However, every penny Dalton earned went towards feeding his son, providing him with the bare minimum he could have. Those years were challenging for Spencer. Living in a small one-bedroom apartment in a forgotten neighborhood of the city, he witnessed his father struggling against life and personal demons. Despite everything, Spencer admired Dalton's strength, his determination to stay sober, and the unconditional love he showed his son. Although the circumstances were challenging, Dalton's kindness served as a beacon for Spencer, lighting his way during the darkest times. And it was this unwavering love that shaped the character of young Spencer, teaching him invaluable lessons about resilience, love, and the importance of staying true to his principles, no matter how difficult the path may be. At 18, on the cusp of adulthood, a tragedy deeply shook Spencer's already suffering world. His father, Dalton, the only pillar he had left, was brutally taken from his life in a hit-and-run accident. A gray morning, a frantic knock on the door, and a police officer with a sorrowful expression were the heralds of the devastating news. "Spencer, there has been an accident." "I'm sorry, son, your father, he didn't make it," announced the officer in a blue uniform, his face marked by the hardness of the task. Spencer felt the ground disappear beneath his feet, the world around him becoming a blur. The sharp pain in his chest suffocated him, and he had to lean against the wall to avoid collapsing. His father, the man who had made so many sacrifices for him, who had fought his demons for him, was now lost forever. Amidst the pain and despair, Spencer found himself alone. Without family, without support, and still too young to have an established safety net, he had to quickly learn to fend for himself. And so, he found himself following in Dalton's footsteps. With steady hands but a heavy heart, Spencer grabbed Dalton's old wheelbarrow. He walked the streets, just like his father used to, in the silent early mornings of Los Angeles. His eyes, once filled with dreams of a better life, now searched for discarded cardboard to ensure his survival. He remembered the stories his father told about the dignity of work, no matter how humble. "Every piece of cardboard we collect, Spencer," Dalton would say, "is one more step in the fight against adversity. Always remember that, my son. It doesn't matter the job, what matters is doing it with dignity and honesty." Those words echoed in Spencer's mind with every box he picked up, with every grunt of effort, with every drop of sweat. He became a cardboard scavenger, taking on his father's legacy, not only in profession but in the determination and character forged through the hardships of a tough life. Spencer tirelessly fought, day after day, facing the chilly early mornings of Los Angeles in search of cardboard to sell. The reward was small, almost insignificant, and the task was arduous and exhausting. That means of subsistence, which Dalton had sustained with such dignity, proved to be an almost unsustainable burden for Spencer. The money he earned barely covered his basic needs. Every penny earned was a difficult choice, buying a decent meal or contributing to the rent of the small apartment he shared with his father's memory. The scale of survival tipped toward hunger. After all, even if his stomach growled, having a roof over his head was a luxury he couldn't give up. However, the inevitable happened. One day, the building owner, a man with rough features and an indifferent gaze, knocked on his door with an eviction notice in hand. "You're months behind, Spencer. I can't allow this anymore." "You have 1 week to leave," he said, leaving Spencer devastated by the coldness of the ultimatum. A week later, with a backpack containing his few belongings and a heart heavy with despair, Spencer left the only home he knew. With nowhere to go, without a plan, Spencer found himself with no alternative but to live on the streets. The streets of Los Angeles, once just a workplace, became his shelter. He found a quiet alley where he improvised a bed with cardboard and old blankets he found. It was a new and cruel world, where the cold of the night was just one of the many threats. And yet, amidst it all, Spencer continued to fight, driven by his father's memory and the need to survive. Life on the streets of Los Angeles, under the harshness of its spotlight, was a daily battle for Spencer. There was no respite or mercy in the cutting cold of winter nights, nor in the hungry bellies beneath layers of dirt and rags. Moreover, dangers lurked around every corner, in every shadow. Violent clashes between the homeless, abuse from heartless individuals, and constant vulnerability marked his days. "You're worth nothing, get out of here, stinky, there's no place for you here," these were the cruel words that echoed in his ears as he tried to find a safe place to sleep or a warm meal to ease his hunger. Then, a glimmer of hope emerged. One day, while wandering the streets in search of cardboard, Spencer crossed paths with a group of waste pickers. Noticing his weary appearance and his cart full of cardboard, one of them, a man named Carlos, approached. "You seem to know what you're doing, kid," said Carlos, a gentle smile lighting up his weathered face. "Have you heard of the Waste Pickers Cooperative? We have a place to stay and offer work to those in need." Spencer, although initially skeptical, felt a warmth of hope ignite in his chest. The opportunity to have a roof over his head again and a community that understood his situation was something he couldn't refuse. "Yes, I would love that," replied Spencer, grateful. "I really need a place to stay and work." Carlos smiled and nodded. "Great, come with us. The cooperative always has its doors open to those willing to work." And so, Spencer joined the Waste Pickers Cooperative. It wasn't the life he had dreamed of, but it provided a safe place to sleep and the possibility of a more stable income. It was a small step towards a better future, and he embraced it with gratitude and determination. In the following 2 years, Spencer's life in the Waste Pickers Cooperative was not without challenges. He would wake up at the break of dawn when Los Angeles was still asleep under the veil of twilight, and spend long hours collecting cardboard and other recyclable materials from the city streets. His back ached from the continuous effort, his hands bore the scars of hard work, and his stomach often grumbled from the scarcity of food. However, despite the hardships, the cooperative offered him something precious, a safe place to rest his weary head at the end of the day. It was a simple shared dormitory with other pickers, bunk beds, and a single bathroom, but it was a refuge against the indifference of the outside world. It was a place where he could close his eyes without the constant fear of being attacked or expelled. These years were marked by silent resilience. Spencer yearned for a better life. He dreamt of the possibility of escaping poverty and finding an opportunity that could transform his reality. He often imagined himself with a stable job, perhaps even returning to school to complete his education. However, these dreams seemed elusive, relegated to the realm of fantasy. No matter how much he wished for it, Spencer couldn't find a chance for change, a door that would lead him down a different path. The world, it seemed, had nothing to offer to a young cardboard picker. So, Spencer stood firm, persisting in the monotony of his days, sustained by the hope that someday, perhaps, the opportunity he longed for would finally come. On a hot summer day, 2 years after joining the cooperative, Spencer was, as usual, rummaging through the depths of a large dumpster behind a fancy restaurant. His hands, accustomed to the work, meticulously separated the recyclable waste. Suddenly, his agile fingers encountered an object strangely heavy and soft. He pulled out a good quality leather bag, seemingly forgotten among the debris. Intrigued, Spencer opened the bag, and his heart almost stopped. Inside, a true treasure, bundles and bundles of $150 bills, forming a sum that Spencer had never seen in his entire life. He estimated there must have been around $200,000 there, an amount that could change his life in ways he could hardly dare to dream of. Images of a new life flooded his mind, a warm and cozy home, decent meals every day, the chance to start his own business or perhaps even resume his studies. The prospect was tempting, almost irresistible. However, his father's teachings echoed in his mind, honesty, son, is the most important value we can have. Never forget that, even in the toughest times. And even in the midst of temptation, Spencer knew what he had to do. Holding the bag close to his chest, he muttered to himself, someone might be desperate for this money right now, just like we were. With a deep and determined sigh, he decided that he would find the owner of the bag and return the money. As much as that fortune could change his life, Spencer knew that his conscience and integrity were worth much more. Besides, someone might need that money. With the heavy bag in hand, Spencer went in search of Michael, the director of the cooperative. He found him in his small office, a room with a single creaking ceiling fan, a cluttered desk, and piles of papers. "Michael, I need to show you something," Spencer said, placing the bag of money on the table. Michael, a middle-aged man with worry lines etched on his face, looked surprised at the contents of the bag. His eyes widened, and he choked. "Spencer, what is this?" he exclaimed, staring in astonishment at the fortune unfolding before him. "I found it in the restaurant dumpster. It has to be returned to its owner, but I don't know how to find them," Spencer explained, anxious. Michael seemed to take a moment to process the information. Then he asked, with a shrewd look, "And why wouldn't you keep it, Spencer? You need this money more than anyone." Spencer felt a shock at the question. "Because it's not mine, Michael. My father always said that honesty is what makes us true men. And that includes returning what doesn't belong to us." As the silence hung in the air, Michael cast a calculating glance at the bundle of money. His face lit up with a new idea as he proposed, "Spencer, have you ever thought about donating this money to the shelter? We're always on the brink of financial collapse, trying to improve conditions for everyone here." This suggestion from Michael was like a shot in the stillness of the office, echoing off the walls and hitting Spencer with a disconcerting force. A murmur of indignation stirred within him, his eyebrows furrowing as he tried to make sense of Michael's suggestion. "Michael," Spencer began, his words imbued with a mix of surprise and firmness, "this money doesn't belong to us. Yes, we need resources, but using money that isn't ours, that's not right." This reaction ignited a heated discussion between the two. Michael argued that donating the money to the shelter could be justified since it would help so many in need. Spencer, on the other hand, continued to insist on returning the money to its rightful owner. He emphasized that, despite the precarious situation of the cooperative, honesty and integrity could not be compromised. The tense conversation not only highlighted Michael's strange behavior but also raised a series of questions in Spencer's mind. The contrast between Michael's insistence on keeping the money and his father's teaching about the importance of honesty became even clearer and more disturbing. Despite the growing discomfort and Michael's numerous attempts to dissuade him, Spencer remained steadfast in his decision. He persisted, defending his principles with a courage that only someone who had experienced so many obstacles and trials could possess. "Michael," Spencer began, his voice determined, cutting through the tense air of the office, "we can't keep this money. I know the shelter needs resources, but this just isn't right." Michael seemed prepared to argue, but the seriousness in Spencer's expression made him back down. There was something in the young man's gaze that spoke louder than his words, a gleam of conviction and integrity that Michael couldn't ignore. After a long and tense discussion, Spencer finally convinced Michael to allow him to make an announcement in the local Facebook community. In a world flooded with technology, where news travels at an astonishing speed, social media seemed to be the best way to find the true owner of that money. Taking a deep breath, Spencer sat in the old creaky office chair, and with hesitant fingers, began typing the announcement. "High-value item found in the trash, seeking the owner." He took care not to reveal too many details that could lead to false claims, but made it clear enough for the rightful owner to identify the lost money. As the message was sent out to the Facebook community, Spencer felt a wave of relief mixed with apprehension. He didn't know what the future held for him, but he knew that whatever it was, he was doing the right thing. Unbeknownst to Spencer, there was an undercurrent of malice floating beneath Michael's benevolent facade. Once the announcement was posted, the cooperative director insisted once again, this time with an almost pleading tone. "Spencer," Michael began, his thick eyebrows furrowed in a falsely convincing expression of concern, "that's a lot of money. We need to keep it safe. My office has a safe, we could store it there." Spencer, already with a seed of distrust planted in his heart, declined the offer. "No, Michael," he said with surprising firmness. "I think I'll hold on to it. That way, I can hand it over immediately when the owner shows up." Michael didn't press any further. However, behind his nodding smile, his thoughts were already scheming a plan. At the end of the day, when the cooperative was enveloped in a quiet peace and the rays of the setting sun bathed the piles of cardboard in a soft golden light, Michael placed a call to his brother, Drake. "Drake, I need you to come to the cooperative tomorrow," he began, his voice low and cunning seeping through the phone receiver. "Come dressed nicely. Say that you lost a certain amount of money and describe the bag it was in." Michael was determined to ensure that the money found its way to him, even if it meant deceiving the unsuspecting young man who, by a twist of fate, had stumbled upon a small fortune. Spencer, completely unaware of the sinister plan taking shape, slept that night with the sense that he was doing the right thing, unaware that he was about to be drawn into a whirlwind of manipulation and deceit. Before drifting off to sleep, curiosity haunted Spencer once again. With the heavy black bag sitting by his side, he decided to give it one last inspection. He ran his hands over the external pockets, but it was the smaller inner pocket that caught his attention. Inside, his fingers found a smooth and cold object. He pulled it out and examined it in the streetlight's glow that seeped through the window. It looked like some kind of device, no bigger than his palm, with a metallic casing and a single bright red button on top. The reflected light from the streetlight seemed to dance on the device's chrome surface, and it turned slowly in Spencer's hands. Its shape and size made it resemble a remote control, but there were no additional buttons or a digital screen, just that singular red button that seemed to mock him with its silent glow. Spencer, try as he might, couldn't determine its function. "What could this be?" he murmured to himself, his eyes focused on the object. "Maybe it's a way to identify the true owner," he concluded, his eyebrows furrowing at the possibility. Armed with this new puzzle piece, Spencer went to bed with renewed hope that he could solve this mystery and return the money to its rightful owner. Unaware of what the device truly meant or what the next day would bring, he fell asleep with the bag secure by his side, the mysterious metal device resting in his hands. As the daylight began to seep through the cracks of the old cooperative structure, a smartly dressed man appeared at the door. His name was Drake, and he carried an air of confidence that seemed out of place in the austere environment. His gaze quickly scanned the scavengers until his eyes found Spencer. "I believe you have something that belongs to me," Drake said, attempting to maintain a casual tone, but Spencer sensed the tension that lay beneath his words. Set against the rustic backdrop of the cooperative, Spencer stared back at Drake with a steady and focused gaze. He posed the first question, a pointed inquiry that he believed only the true owner of the bag could answer correctly. "What is the exact value contained in the bag?" Spencer's voice sounded firm and unquestionable, weighing heavily in the silence around them. Drake seemed taken aback, stumbling over his words. Hesitant, he mumbled a vague and imprecise sum that starkly contrasted with the specific amount that Spencer knew. Not allowing Drake to regain his composure, Spencer pressed on, his determination heightening the tension in the air. "And what else was inside the bag?" Spencer's gaze never wavered from Drake, observing every reaction, every shift in the man's expression. Drake appeared increasingly uncomfortable, his eyes wandering as he struggled to craft a plausible response. He made a vague reference to some personal items, but his silence about the device did not go unnoticed by Spencer. Feeling in control of the situation, Spencer decided to play his trump card. He randomly mentioned a few objects, items he knew for certain were not in the bag. Drake, however, took the bait, readily agreeing that these objects were indeed part of the bag's contents. The temporary relief on his face upon recognizing the fictional items was the final proof for Spencer that Drake was definitely not the owner of the bag. Confronted with the blatant lie, Spencer regarded Drake with disgust. "You're not the owner of this bag," he declared, his voice resonating with conviction. At that moment, a roar of indignation erupted from the nearby office. Michael, his face flushed with anger, stormed onto the scene. "What are you doing, Spencer?" he shouted, the veins in his neck bulging with rage. He knew the plan had failed, and the fury in his gaze only confirmed Spencer's suspicions. The truth was beginning to unravel. With a burning look of fury, Michael urged Spencer to hand the bag over to Drake immediately. "Spencer, give it to him now." His tone was cold and stern, punctuated by the pounding of his fist on the table. However, Spencer, with his unwavering gaze, held his ground. "I find it very strange that you insist on this, Michael," he replied, suspicion tinging his voice. Indignant, Michael grabbed his phone and quickly dialed the police, reporting the situation in an accusatory tone. In the blink of an eye, sirens wailed in the distance, and soon enough, the entrance of the cooperative was swarmed by blue uniforms. Michael and Drake pointed at Spencer, accusing him of theft. The officers seemed ready to handcuff Spencer, whose calm expression was a stark contrast to the surrounding tension. Just as the situation seemed destined for an unfavorable outcome, the door of the cooperative swung open once again. This time, a man of elegant posture and refined attire entered the space. He exuded an aura of authority that momentarily silenced the room. "I am Edmund Franklin," he declared, his voice carrying a gentle confidence that sounded like music to Spencer's ears. "And I believe that bag is mine." Eyes widened with recognition. Edmund Franklin, the renowned owner of an investment firm, stood there, claiming ownership of the bag that had caused all the commotion. Skepticism permeated the room as all eyes turned to Edmund. Spencer, however, remained calm and asked with a firm and assured voice, "If you are truly the owner of the bag, could you tell us the exact value inside it?" Edmund, without hesitation, responded with the same calmness, there is precisely $207,850 in the bag." He paused and added, "and also a device, to be more precise, a tracker." The room fell silent for a moment as everyone processed the information. Michael and Drake exchanged looks of disbelief, while the police officers and the others present seemed shocked. Then Edmund continued, explaining, "I wanted to conduct an experiment to test the integrity of my employees, so I created this bag as a trap." He paused, looking around the room, before concluding, "However, somehow, the package ended up in the trash. Given the value involved, I thought it prudent to add a tracking device to the bag." Everyone in the room fell silent, digesting the stunning revelation. Edmund never took his eyes off Spencer, a gleam of respect evident in his gaze. Faced with Edmund's confirmation, Spencer didn't hesitate. He retrieved the specified amount and the tracking device from the bag, showing them to everyone in the room. The police, upon seeing the evidence, confirmed that Spencer was indeed innocent of the charges brought against him. Right at that moment, the door of the cooperative swung open once again, and a man, one of the shelter's residents, entered breathlessly. He pointed at Michael and Drake, saying, "I know these two. They're brothers." His voice rang out clearly, resonating in the silent room. The revelation surprised everyone, but the man didn't stop there. He looked directly at the police and continued, "And I overheard Michael in his office, talking to Drake about some large sum they would split between them." A surprised murmur spread through the room as everyone processed the information. The police officers exchanged meaningful glances, their attention now focused on Michael and Drake. With the compelling testimony of the homeless resident and the evidence presented, they quickly grasped the situation. Without wasting time, they placed the brothers under arrest, taking them into custody for attempted fraud. The ensuing silence was filled only by the collective satisfaction of seeing justice being served. The commotion of the situation slowly subsided, and Edmund, with a profound expression of gratitude, turned to Spencer. He contemplated the young man for a moment before beginning to speak, his eyes shining with genuine admiration. "Spencer," he started, his voice filled with respect, "your honesty and integrity today have exceeded what I ever expected to find. You are a living example that true wealth lies in character, not in one's wallet." Edmund paused, his gaze fixed on Spencer. "I would like to offer you an opportunity to change your life," he continued. "I have a position in my company that I believe would be perfect for you. Additionally, I would like to offer you a full scholarship for college. I believe a young man of your character and determination deserves a chance to improve his life." Spencer's face lit up, his eyes shining with surprise and happiness. He couldn't believe what he was hearing, but at the same time, he knew he was ready to seize this opportunity with both hands. I accept," said Spencer, his voice choked with emotion. "Thank you so much, Mr. Franklin." He could feel his father's pride pulsating in his heart, a comforting warmth that he knew would never fade. He had honored his father's legacy, embodying the values his father had taught him, and now he was being rewarded for his honesty and integrity. Over the following weeks, a series of unpleasant revelations were uncovered about the cooperative and the shelter. A meticulous audit revealed a scheme in which Michael had been embezzling funds for his own use, a discovery that only fueled his legal punishment and intensified community disapproval. With Michael removed from his position, a new director took charge of the cooperative and the shelter. Committed to honesty and transparency, this individual worked to undo the damage and restore the trust the institution once held. Meanwhile, Edmund Franklin, the man whose generosity had changed Spencer's life, became a notable benefactor of the shelter. His contributions and attention transformed the cooperative and the shelter, providing its residents with more dignified living conditions and fostering an environment where hope could flourish. And amidst it all, Spencer felt a deep sense of pride in himself. He looked back on the journey he had traveled, the choices he had made, and knew that he had done the right thing. He remained true to himself, his values, and his father, and it brought him a sense of fulfillment that could not be compared to anything else. "I did the right thing," he said to himself, a gentle smile gracing his lips. "I'm certain Dad would be proud of me." Although he was already overwhelmed by the turn of events in his life, Spencer's story was far from over. The first thing he did upon joining Edmund's company was to study. He enrolled in a business administration course at the local university, a college he could never have afforded on his own. In the early months, life was challenging. Studying and working were challenges Spencer had never faced before. But he remembered his father, the struggle, and the sacrifices he had made, and that motivated him to continue. Over the years, many changes came into Spencer's life. He graduated with honors from the university, was promoted several times in Edmund's company, and managed to buy a comfortable house. However, he did not forget his roots and donated a large sum of money to the cooperative and shelter that had helped him when he needed it most. He also created a training and placement program for the homeless, helping them find work and a fresh start in life. On one of those nights, as he walked through the neighborhood where he grew up, Spencer came across a familiar face. It was an older man with a cardboard cart, his face dirty, but his eyes shining with recognition. It was Danny, one of his father's best friends, who had disappeared years before. Danny was moved to hear about Spencer's success and proud of what he had become. The encounter was a powerful reminder for Spencer of his origins and the sacrifices his father had made for him. In many ways, Spencer's life was complete. He had a career, a home, was part of a community, and was making a difference in people's lives. However, there was one thing still missing: a family. After several disappointing encounters, Spencer met Eliza, a beautiful young woman who worked as a volunteer at the shelter. She was intelligent, kind, and dedicated to the cause of the homeless, and the two soon fell in love. They got married in a small ceremony at the cooperative, surrounded by friends and shelter residents. Then came the final shock. Eliza was pregnant. Spencer was going to be a father. The joy he felt in that moment was something he had never experienced before. He knew he had something to give his child that he himself had never had: a stable, loving, and secure life. As he held his newborn child for the first time, Spencer felt overwhelming love. He looked at his child and promised to do everything in his power to give them the best possible start in life. In the end, Spencer's life was an incredible journey from poverty and despair to wealth and fulfillment. But most importantly, through it all, he maintained his honesty and integrity. And those were the qualities that ultimately made all the difference. In that final moment, holding his child in his arms, Spencer knew he had made the right choice, all those times. Despite all the difficulties and trials he faced, Spencer never lost sight of the values his father had taught him. And those values, more than any amount of money, were the true wealth he would pass on to his child. Spencer's story is a testament to the power of honesty, hard work, and dedication. But above all, it's a story about love, a father's love for his child, and that child's love for the memory of his father. Because, in the end, love and integrity are the only things that truly matter in life. And the most valuable lesson Spencer learned throughout his journey was that no matter how much his life changes, he should never forget where he came from. And that's a lesson he will pass on to his child so that they too can face life's adversities with courage and integrity. And so, with a new life beginning in his arms, Spencer closes one chapter of his life and opens another, filled with hope and promise for the future. Because, in the end, he knew his father would be proud of him, not for the money he earned or the success he achieved, but for the man he became. And that, to Spencer, was more valuable than any amount of money. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. I'm sure the story appearing on your screen will also touch your heart. Until the next video.